This podcast is brought to you by Kubo Batteries. You'll be amazed at just how long a single battery can last. It goes on forever!
Hello and welcome to Monkey Broadcast, a monthly review and discussion show with me, the Jonin Monkey.
And me, Sven the Crusader. I fell asleep last night sitting on the couch with a cat in my lap. I have kinks in my neck in places I didn't even know existed, but I've already missed one recording of this, so screw it, we're doing it live.
Happy New Year to you too.
Yeah, basically that.
Well, it's not like I'm unscathed either. I have a slightly tickly throat, so if my voice sounds deeper for some reason, now you know. But anyway.
Suddenly the Jonin we know and are familiar with has turned into Lualog from Sword of the Stranger.
Oh, I'll be amazed if anyone gets that one, but yeah.
So will I.
But yeah, either way, the neck kinks and sore throats are not going to stop us. This is the first Monkey Broadcast of 2015, so on that jolly note, we'll go straight into
Q&A!
Rapidly becoming my favorite part of this show.
Indeed. This is the section where we answer 6 of the questions sent to us by our listeners. If you'd like us to answer your questions, either leave them in the comments, send them to me via PMs, or tweet me at the Jonin Monkey with the hashtag MBQuestion.
Our first question comes from Vice of Legends, and this is going to be interesting for a multitude of reasons.
If Bomberman returned, how do you think the game should be like? I want it to be like Bomberman Generations.
Basically, if Bomberman were to return, I just want it to be good, because I have nothing else to base it on. I've never played the series.
I have slightly more experience in that I played it for about 20 minutes at a cousin's house ages ago.
We're in a great position with this question, aren't we? Basically, I'd be happy with a Bomberman reboot, maybe if they went the Mega Man 9 and 10 route. And also, I'd just be happy if they brought the game back and it wasn't automatically gritty live-action reboot by Chris Nolan.
Oh god, yeah.
Again.
Yeah, I would go with anything that wasn't Bomberman Act Zero because, yeah, admittedly I never played that game, but seriously, what the f*** were they thinking of?
Exactly. I've never played the game, and I don't want to.
Back up on topic. Yeah, Sven's idea of making it like the Mega Man 9 and 10 route would probably be for the best. I think it's something that definitely works better in that kind of top-down perspective. The only thing I would say is that I think it would definitely need some kind of gimmick or some kind of new feature that would draw people back in. I don't know what it would be quite, but just the fact that Bomberman's kind of slipped under the radar, I think just coming out with a new game at this stage, that I'm sure the fans of Bomberman might be happy, but I think if you want large audiences to come back in and sort of just leave a new breath of life into the series, I think it will need something to make it stand out from everything else going on right now.
Bomberman Story Mode is written by BioWare. As if cutesy avatars shearing each other's faces off with frag grenades wasn't already frightening enough.
Oh dear. So yeah, sorry we can't give more of a detailed answer than that. It's not that we dislike Bomberman, it's just we haven't had much experience with it, so we're probably not the best people to answer this question, unfortunately.
Yeah, that sadly happens a lot.
And Vice of Legend's second question, this one's more to me, I believe.
Can you do a review of the NES game Willow and compare it to the movie?
I didn't even know either of those existed, so yeah, that's definitely to you.
Yeah, just to avoid saying what happened in the last question, I'm going to ignore the fact that A, I don't own an NES and don't like using emulators, and B, I've never seen the movie Willow.
Oh god.
I mean, I know it exists, I just haven't seen it, but in answer to the question, I think this question came sometime after the review I did of Evil Under the Sun, which, for those of you who don't know, was a point-and-click adventure game based on a book. It's certainly a possibility. I'm definitely not going to rule it out because I will admit I did have some fun going through the source material and picking up bits and pieces. The only hesitation I would say is that I don't think I would want to do like straight licensed game and compare it to the movie, because a lot of the time licensed games are made purely as merchandise to go along with the movie at a given terrible budgets. That's more often than not why they don't do so well. So I would be hesitant about just doing, oh look, this is the Fantastic Four game. It's barely anything like Fantastic Four. Like the main reason I ended up doing Evil Under the Sun is because that was a project where the creators themselves actually wanted to do something based on Agatha Christie and carefully thought about which direction they wanted to go, and it did go in interesting variations, like the whole Hastings role-playing aspect and the variations on the ending.
Yeah, not to mention just kind of the stupidly narm-tastic acting at some point. I refer, of course, to... Oh, hell.
Oh, yes. What I'm saying is that I'm certainly not ruling it out, because I would love to do it again, but I would have to be cautious, and I wouldn't just want to do it just because, oh, it's a game based on a movie. It would have to be something that went in a unique enough direction that would make it interesting, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And besides, you have to be cautious with licensed games anyway, because most of them are just kinda shit. Our next question comes from Roy Havenstone, who asks,
Have you played any Advance Wars, a franchise which, alongside Smash Bros., convinced Nintendo to localize Fire Emblem?
First off, I would like to thank Roy Havenstone for using the hashtag MB question. That's the first time that's ever happened.
Yay!
But unfortunately, the answer is no. I've not played any Advance Wars. Sven?
Well, my answer is only slightly longer, but I have at least played one game. And it was fantastic! Advance Wars Days of Ruin, I don't know what it's called in Europe, but that's what it's called in America.
Okay.
Predictably, because it is made by Intelligent Systems, the makers of Fire Emblem, it's awesome, as I've already said. And let me preface that by saying I cannot recall the last time I have so desperately wanted to shoot a game's villain in the face.
Oh, wow. So, one thing I can never quite get about Advance Wars, does it have a story, or was it just more like a series of campaigns?
I don't know how it started out, but I can tell you that Advance Wars Days of Ruin definitely has a story. The only difference between it and Fire Emblem is that your units are completely expendable faceless mooks.
Ah, okay.
Also, it is stupidly more difficult.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. Like, it's Fire Emblem 5 and 6 levels of difficult, because the enemy actually has half a brain.
Ouch.
Then again, maybe I'm just used to Fire Emblem's difficulty.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's one of those things that I've wanted to check out, but just haven't had the time, so... Yeah, if you can recommend that game, I'll definitely check it out once I finally get some free time.
Yeah, it's 6 years old at this point, at least, so you should be able to get it pretty cheap. And I totally recommend it. If you can withstand the urge to tear your hair out.
I guess failing that, Nintendo might release it on Virtual Console soon. I mean, for some reason, there have been a lot of Game Boy Advance games on the Wii U Virtual Console at the moment, so...
Well, I wouldn't expect Days of Ruin to crop up because it was a DS game.
Ah, fair enough. Actually, they did say they were going to put DS games on the Wii U, which would make more sense, but anyway...
Never mind then.
Also, on a side note, they've released the original Fire Emblem on the Wii U Virtual Console now as well, so if you have a Wii U, definitely check that one out as well.
Tortured screaming in the distance. If you could hear it, it's something to the tune of, money!
I'll just step away from those tortured screens and move on to our next question from Roy. This one is definitely going to be a topic starter.
Former anime director Hayao Miyazaki once said in an interview that the anime industry is shafted with otaku, or people who don't spend time watching real people. And he points out this is the reason why almost all modern anime lacks variety. It is very self-indulgent and is filled with odd character designs, character interactions, and just characters in general. What are your thoughts on this from a character and story perspective?
Oh boy, that's an interesting one to get into. Okay, first of all, I kind of see what he means by anime being self-serving, because you can just look at all the hentai.
It is true that when I look at the season guides they always released about what new anime are going to be broadcast live in Japan, the amount of stuff that is just some form of hentai or fan service show, it's just depressing. I keep seeing like the same premise coming up time after time after time. And not only that, the same character types. That's what's really irritated me, because we keep seeing the Genki girl, or the energetic one. We keep seeing the Tsundere, and I swear, I am going to snap if I see one more bloody elementary school girl who is hyper intelligent and talks in a very cute monotone like this. It's I've seen far too many of those characters in recent months, and it's just getting so bloody tiring now.
Yeah, and I'm gonna sum up to you why I fell out of really watching anime and got more into shows like Legend of Korra. The reason I fell out of it is because I got into it for shonen. Big mistake. I later realized that the definition of shonen is Dragon Ball Z ripoff. And Dragon Ball Z wasn't even that good.
Oh, there are many children at the 90s that want to obliterate you.
Oh, I'm sure there already are, because One Piece has been going on for longer than the frickin' 90s.
Oh, right now I can see millions of people charging up a tax to destroy your house. So you've got another 10 years. Anyway.
Oh god, because knowing Dragon Ball Z, they have to scream that long first.
Oh, geez. But no, seriously, I want to agree with you that I kind of got into anime because it was something unique and creative. Like, I'm not going to say that anime today is completely without merit. There are a lot of shows I still do enjoy, but I do see where Miyazaki is coming from. I try and think of the number of series I've sat down recently and just enjoyed beginning to end without doing stuff like Sword Art Online, where I eventually just end up watching it just to riff on the damn thing. Because Sword Art Online showed some promise in that regard, but then I went on a massive rant about that in Monkey Broadcast. Attack on Titan is an interesting concept, even if I didn't particularly care for it personally. Log Horizon is an enjoyable series, but that has a lot of the same repetitive tropes. And actually, one way you can tell how anime has shifted in the past few years, think about how many anime have... Oh, there's no nice way to say this. Think about how many anime have super intelligent nerds as the lead hero. You've got stuff like The World God Only Knows, which is basically the world is saved by an expert in hentai games. You got Log Horizon, where the hero of that is an expert strategist and hyper-intelligent college student. Kirito is supposed to be a nerd, even if most of the time he acts like a Hollywood pretty boy. You've got...
And may I just go back further and say, you've got Death Note, who has light, who also has the added accuracy to the stereotype of being a complete douchebag.
Exactly. And then there's also, last year you had, one of the most popular shows was No Game, No Life, where the entire premise is literally, there are two kids who are complete social suttons who are only good at games but terrible at social life, and then suddenly they're taken to a world where games are literally the basis of everything, and they become the most important people in the universe. If that's not self-indulgent fantasy, I don't know what the fuck is, frankly.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be limited to that. Because, given how many anime start off with high school students as their lead characters, you get things like Ichigo. which isn't so much nerd fulfillment as it just is male power fantasy fulfillment.
Yeah, but even with that, at least high school, it's a more general sense. This is kind of a very specific, if you're like a hyper-concentrated nerd, or if you're a major otaku, which is another factor of certain shows, then you can be the hero, which I think is just pandering at this point. That's what the main problem I see with anime, is that a lot of it is just repeating the same tropes in order to appeal to that niche market, and I just think it's really hard to convince someone who's not already an anime fan to get into it these days for that reason.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. Not only do you have those overused archetypes, but just going back to the lead characters too, I remember a day, like 5 years ago, whenever anime used to be interesting enough to have decent protagonists, as in not complete and utter Mary Sues and Gary Stews.
Yeah, just a flawed protagonist who's not insanely good at everything, that would be fine.
That would be a welcome change at this point.
In our original recording, I then used this moment to springboard into a discussion about the show when superpowered battles became commonplace, which aired in the latter half of last year. The reason I like the show so much, despite the fact that it ended up being a light and breezy romantic comedy, was because it was willing to challenge those cliches. It had the highly intelligent monotone schoolchild, but it actually addressed that it was not normal for her to hang around with high schoolers, and there will come a time when life will take them all in different directions and leave her on her own. The main protagonist, Ando, is likeable because he's willing to act when faced with problems, and when a girl develops a crush on him due to a misunderstanding, he mans up, explains the misunderstanding, and apologizes to the girl, and while she is heartbroken at first, it's a lot better for her in the long run. Hell, there is even an episode where one of the characters actually confronts Ando, who is an otaku through and through, and says, you know. But there's also one episode that explores the paradox how nerd culture claims it wants people to understand it, but at the same time revels so much in its exclusive nature that it doesn't let people in, and it's actually quite frustrating to those who are trying to get into it. The reason I cut it out is that I wasn't quite as concise when we were doing the recording. In fact, and I'm embarrassed to say this is true, I wasted 5 minutes of Sven's time desperately trying to find a monologue on YouTube, which apparently it never occurred to me to do before the recording. But yeah, in short, it really says something about the state of modern anime today when one of the shows I liked last year was one of the few shows that actually tried to buck the trends.
Basically, at this point, I can basically only find enjoyment in one kind of anime nowadays. Anime like, and this is gonna sound like a bizarre combination without context because of the nature of the shows, but I can only enjoy one kind of anime. Those that completely throw out all the stereotypes. I'm talking things like, I don't know, Full Metal Alchemist, which ended 5 years ago. And actually, hilariously, Ouran Host Club, even though it's a rom-com.
Yeah, but at least that rom-com is able to challenge some things, and in fact, I think, in my case, I don't think the anime industry is, like, completely dead and buried. There are still the occasional good shows that came out of there, but I think Log Horizon is the only anime I'm watching consistently, and you do get something enjoyable occasionally, but I'm just wishing that something groundbreaking would come along. Like I said, all I'm watching at the moment is Log Horizon, and the last series I got fully invested in and enjoyed without, like, any kind of reservations or snarkiness involved. It was either Girantino on the Rendezvous Planet or Giant Killings. There hasn't been anything since that's got me really excited where I feel, right, I have to watch this now.
Yeah, sadly, that was me up until Full Metal Alchemist ended. Sob. Because I really liked that series. That was a unique shonen.
Indeed. But yeah, that ends this overly long question, so let's move on.
Our next question comes from our other stalwart Toon Junkie.
If you could have a conversation with a cod, what would you converse about?
Why are you so delicious? I mean, I don't like eating people I'm having a conversation with, but My God, it just tastes so good, you know that? I mean, okay, I do find it odd that when you're boiled, you take like a minute to chew, and your bones are kind of annoying at times. That's why I usually have to remove. But my God, just put some banana around it and ketchup. You're really good. I mean, I know it's kind of bad for your species, but damn, I really like you. That's why I insist on having you at least once a week. Sorry, that was kind of weird, but
Well, for me, my answers would be that. And, what sort of deep, unbridled shame do you feel at the prospect of sharing your name with the shortening of the worst FPS franchise in video game history?
you know, with the amount of fan bases you've pissed off, I'm surprised your house hasn't been blown up sooner.
Yeah, so am I. I think my cat's a lucky charm.
Or maybe just the fact that our very low popularity rating's a blessing.
That's true.
And our final question, again from Toon Junkie.
A space wizard has challenged you to a duel. What duel do you duel him in?
That's a good question. I mean, there are several possibilities. I mean, there's obviously magic. I'd have to, of course, brush up on the lore of the era. But given it's a space wizard, I could also have a good old-fashioned Old West showdown with phasers.
Oh, yes. That would be a tricky one. I mean, part of me would be tempted to go one-on-one sword duel, but putting aside that my own sword duels are average at best, I have a very spotty win record, there's also the suspicion that he may bring magic into the duel, and that could get nasty real fast, especially since I'm assuming he has more experience of it. So, I guess I would go with something I'm fairly confident in. So, it would probably either be video games or card games, but since I know most people have a ridiculous amount of training in that area, I'd probably go with Sonic Adventure 2's multiplayer mode, because I know no one has been playing that professionally.
I gotta give you credit. That is a unique answer right there.
Because, as I know, if I try to challenge him with Smash Bros. Sod's Law, he's a tournament player.
Yeah, you just can't take any chances. I'm just gonna go with Old West style space blaster duel. Because I live in the Old West. And also because in my head I just cannot now get out the idea of the good, the bad, and the ugly played on a theremin and a keyboard.
Wow. Well, actually, I'll tell you what. There's a chance you would die, but man, that would be an awesome way to go. And on that awesome note, we will once again say thank you to our subscribers for the questions, and I will also mention right now, the backlog is getting small, so please feel free to send us boatloads of questions.
Wow, those are words I never thought I'd hear said. The backlog is getting small.
Yeah, we're slowly running out. Give it a couple of months, all 6 questions will be from Toon Junkies.
Well, the content we've been getting out of them lately, I'm not against that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. And on that note, we will now go ahead to
Reviews!
Yeah, like this section says on the tin, this is where we review everything we've read, watched, or played within the last month. And for my choice, I had a sudden change of plan for this one, because for the longest time, I was going to review Smash Bros. For the Wii U. But I changed that for 2 reasons. One, I decided that my review of Smash Bros. Was basically, it's awesome! And here's a minor nitpick list. Which, frankly, would be better suited to a QuickTime review. The only thing I will say on that front is that there's been rumblings is that Sakurai will retire, or at the very least step down from the Smash Bros. Series after this game, and honestly, whilst the game was fun, I'm not going to be sorry to see him go for a long list of reasons.
Yeah. If you include a list of reasons, I presume they're gonna be in editing.
Well, it's mostly the fact that he's a guy with great ideas, but has a tendency to overwork himself and then get self-righteous, especially since he actually said recently in an interview that he feels like if anyone plays Smash Bros. Competitively, then there's a massive failure. Which I think is, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the tournament scene, but that is a really dickish thing to say. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, God.
On that basis alone, and the fact that he says that I'm willing to include storytelling in games, but I want to be in charge of it because if we have to make changes, it's too much work to notify a writer, which I don't sympathise with at all, because speaking as someone who, as part of a college course, was made director of my entire class on a project and had to keep a constant line of communication between the departments, that's your f***ing job. But yeah, this isn't about Sakurai, like I said. It's more the fact that I ended up watching a movie that a lot of people have been pretty much been against from the start, but I think there are some elements about it I want to defend, especially since I've read a rumor recently that the series is going to change hands and take a different direction. That movie is The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Ah, yes. I'm probably going to be completely in the dark about this because I haven't even watched The Amazing Spider-Man 1. I have seen the first Spider-Man trilogy so many times that I never want to see a Spider-Man work again.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I know there are some people foaming at the mouth right now, but I will explain that, yes, whatever I say about this movie, I will admit that the reasons why Sony basically just making these movies solely so that they can hold on to the rights of Spider-Man is kind of crappy, especially since, you know, there's like Marvel have been making this big universe right now, and it would be nice to have Spider-Man be a part of that. And what with, frankly, the terrible, terrible decisions they've been making throughout this run, especially that if this movie was successful, they were going to try and make a Sinister Six review as a kind of villain Avengers spin-off, which, God no, that is such a stupid idea. I'm just going to say that, yes, I'm well aware of those things, and I agree that it's a stupid thing. But, having said all of that, I'm not going to hold that against the finished product. I'm going to hold it against Sony, but I'm going to review the film on its own merits, and whilst it still has problems, I do think it also has some really good qualities. The most important ones being the two leads, Andrew Garfield and Emma Watson, who are frankly awesome in their parts as Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, I'm not gonna lie.
So I've heard. Which almost makes me interested enough to watch the movie, but again, Spider-Man first trilogy exhaustion.
Yeah, the thing is of that though, I'm gonna be one of the few people to say I actually far prefer him to Tobey Maguire, and I think he is actually a breath of fresh air from the way, like, Maguire is okay, but he had a tendency to be a little bit too whiny. I don't like using that term, but I can't think of anything better right now. He had like a tendency to like do the whole quiver and, oh, what's going on, Mary Jane? Why are you saying these things? And that kind of thing.
Which, even to me, does not strike me as very Spider-Man. Also, Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. Oh, God. But yeah, those two are really awesome. And the fact is, you can tell that they're really good actors because they are given a material that is sometimes it's just okay and sometimes it's really awkward when you actually look at the words, but because they're a couple in real life and they're really good actors, they actually somehow make it work. Like, it's really hard to explain in audio form, but just like the little gestures they do, like one of the least settled examples is that they do the whole thing where Gwen, she knows who Spider-Man is at this point. She is trying to say, I'll go with you, Spider-Man, I can fix the problem. Spider-Man then webs her to a car, does the whole, no, you can't follow me, this is something I must do alone, and then flies off, and then Gwen yells out, Peter! You know, this kind of angry moment, and then straight after that, like Emma Watson claps her hand over her mouth, and you can just tell she's thinking, secret identity, right, probably shouldn't have said that.
Wow. A moment of actual self-awareness in a superhero movie.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good word for it. Like, they're more self-aware than characters, and just sort of, I guess in a way, even if the script is bad, they just know how to, like, at least inject some life into it so that you can actually go along and enjoy it. I would admit, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, whilst the first Amazing Spider-Man, it was trying to be a little bit like The Dark Knight, with the fact that almost everything happened at night time and there was like loads of dark, gritty colours and everything. This movie, it does have a lot of entertaining action sequences. The first 10 minutes of it, where Spider-Man is chasing after a mercenary who eventually becomes the Rhino, It's cheesy, yeah. I mean, the Rhino himself, it's basically just, I forget the actor's name. I'm tempted to say John DiMaggio. I don't know if it is him, though. His entire character is basically, I am Russian killer! That is his entire character, but the entire sequence is filled with bright colour. There's like a lot of kinetic energy. It's a cheesy but incredibly fun sequence on its own, and there is another element to it which plays throughout the film, and it's something I actually really like about the two Amazing Spider-Man films, is that it's not just about Spider-Man basically beating up the villains. Like, one of the things I really liked in the first one, even if the execution of it was a little sloppy at times, was that as a kind of differentiation from the first Spider-Man movie made by Raimi, he doesn't catch Uncle Ben's killer right away. He goes on a vigilante spree, and then he's talking to Gwen's dad as Peter, and he's saying, well, I think Spider-Man is doing a job the police can't. And Gwen's dad goes, no, he's not. He's just beating up people who looks the same. That's not being a hero. He's not looking out for people. And then there is a later scene on the bridge where Spider-Man helps a kid who's almost about to fall off a bridge due to collateral damage, and he realizes, okay, I can actually do some better stuff here. And this movie, Amazing Spider-Man 2, has a montage sequence which I really liked. It's kind of the standard thing where it's Spider-Man going around saving people whilst news reports are going back and forth about whether or not they think Spider-Man's a good person or not. But the thing Spider-Man is doing this time, he's not just going after diamond thieves, which was what happened in the Raimi films. He's doing stuff like, he's actually interacting with the people he saves. Like he said, there's like one cheesy but cute scene where there's like a kid who's getting beat up with some bullies. Spider-Man leaps down to save him, and he goes, oh wait, is this your school product? Oh wow, this is actually pretty amazing. Come on, here, I'll fix it, I'll walk you home. What's your name? Oh, Max? Yeah, that's a very nice name. You know, like, it's cheesy, but I do actually like that he's interacting with the people he saves, and he's constantly watching out for them as well. Like, there's a later battle with Electro when, because Electro, well, as the name implies, attacks with electricity.
No, really? I thought it was fire!
Yeah, there's like a moment where, using his spider sense, he realizes that some people are going to put their hands on the metal railings whilst Electro's attacking the ground, so he basically uses his web to pull them away before they get electrocuted. So I do like this idea that, again, Spider-Man is interacting and looking out for the New York citizens even whilst he's battling supervillains, because it actually shows why people give a damn that he's there, why people are kind of happy and appreciative that he exists in this place. So, yeah, despite its problems, I do like its movies for portraying that side of Spider-Man.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because even though it's easy on the surface to just write off the Amazing Spider-Man series as dark and gritty Chris Nolan reboot again, even though it's easy to write off the movies as bad, they actually seem to be more self-aware than the Raimi films and, you know, the Chris Nolan Batman films.
Oh dear. But yeah, those are aspects I really do like about the movie as a whole. The acting and that characterization of Spider-Man. Unfortunately, these movies do have a lot of problems. Here's the best way to sum it up. Okay, the posters and, like, the DVD covers show Spider-Man going up against Electro. But Electro isn't the main villain. Oh, no. You see, Electro ends up being a partner for Harry Osborn. Who's Harry Osborn? Well, he's a friend of Peter's who suddenly shows up halfway through. He then takes over Oscorp, and he has his own problems because he suddenly realizes that his father, Norman Osborn, is on the deathbed, and Norman explains to him, yeah, Harry, I should mention I have a life-threatening disease, and it's genetic, so it's passing to you. Have fun. And,
wow, that's some convenient timing. Or, in this case, decidedly inconvenient.
Yeah, so
you've got Harry, who is very keen to find a way to live, basically, and whilst you've got Electro being set up and his slow transformation, you've then got Harry, who is dragging in Peter and then trying to get him to involve Spider-Man because apparently the genetic spider that gave Spider-Man his powers might also contain the cure for his life-threatening disease, but when Spider-Man says no, it might do horrible stuff to you, he gets angry, so he teams up with Electro. But then part of the reason why Oscorp has all of these amazing things is because there is a man in the shadows who is part of an ongoing plot between the first and second films, who has been organising everything, and was also responsible for the death of Peter Parker's parents, who were also members of Oscorp, and we find out there that there's a whole conspiracy going on there, especially since they were framed to look like...
Are you starting to see where the problems lie?
I'm sorry, but what?
Yeah, that's the thing. There is so much going on, and they just keep adding more and more elements to it. Like, when you finally get to the mystery plot, that is so ridiculously overstuffed because, again, there's the entire opening sequence, which is about Peter Parker's parents, like, trying to escape on a plane and then fighting off someone who was trying to kill them, only to die in plane crash and send the last of their knowledge to Roosevelt, which I was thinking, oh, okay, that may be an important part of the film. Not mentioned until the last third. And even then, it is one scene, like, okay, there's a bit of build-up when Peter's, like, looking at his dad's things and trying to figure it out, but there is one scene where he just magically figures out that it's a secret subway station, and then he reveals in the subway station there's an old computer with a video recording where his father decides, you know what, I'm going to make this plot even more complicated and say that the genetic super spider, in order to spite Norman Osborn, is coded directly to my bloodline so that only a Parker can gain super spider powers, which of all the contrived conveniences...
Why would you even need to do that? I'm not even that big of a Marvel fan, and I know you wouldn't need to do that. I mean, the explanation for his powers are right there.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that it's not even consistent because the opening of the damn movie shows him killing most of the spiders. Why would he even do that if they're completely useless to anyone other than a Parker?
Oh my god, that's bad.
Yeah, and it all builds to like a climax of supervillains, and it's actually kind of funny. Like I said, the best parts of this film are the interactions. You've got Peter Parker interacting with Gwen and Spider-Man interacting with the civilians. Those are the best parts for me, and the reason I mention that is because the rumor going round, which I mentioned on Twitter, was that Marvel said that if they ever did get the rights back, they wanted to push away from the whole romance angle and focus exclusively on Spider-Man being a superhero and fighting the villains. Which, okay, yeah, I'm glad they're going in a different direction from this, but at the same time, the least interesting parts of this entire movie are the supervillain battles. Mainly because, yeah, they're kind of fun and kinetic, but it's a problem I'm having with a lot of superhero movies lately, is that the villains are there purely to have a final fight that is spectacle. I mean, like, even the Marvel movies are guilty of this. Like, in 4-2, you had Malekith, who's basically Christopher Eccleston in makeup, and I'm an elf who wants to drown everything in darkness. And then you've got the Extremis from Iron Man 3. I want to kill the president and show everyone how awesome my superpowers are. You've got Ronin from Guardians of the Galaxy. I want to destroy this entire planet. It's like, there's no characterization to them, and the villains, Max and Harry, they're interesting when they're normal humans and they're interacting with people, and after their main scenes, like, they just eventually lose all of that. Like, when Max first becomes Electro and he's wandering around city in confusion and Spider-Man tries to talk him down, that's when he's at his most interesting. But then he gets captured and then taken to a secret Oscorp lab as part of a big cover-up, and then he just becomes a less interesting character who just goes, I've got so much anger within me, and I've decided that if I ever break out of here, I'm going to kill everyone and show them my despair. I will kill Spider-Man as well to enhance that despair, because I now hate him for some reason.
Hi, Sasuke!
And even then, when he takes over the power plant, he goes, I will drain all the power from the city and become a god to them. Why? I mean, yes, it's shown you have this problem with wanting attention, but why the feck did you leap from that to godhood?
Why did you leap from that to godhood? A question I've asked of Bleach 1,000 times.
Harry Osborn is even worse, like, Spider-Man, I hate you. You refused to give me your blood because you said it could turn me into a monstrosity. So I broke into Oscorp and stole their spider venom and injected it into myself. And I became a monstrosity. So now I hate you. It's just so contrived, especially with the fact that the way he gets the goblin suit is literally, inject myself with spider blood. Oh god, it's not working. Let's creep into this super armor that conveniently has both a healing option and a glider.
Man, that's a convenient coincidence.
Yeah, and it's like, that's the big problem. Like, the supervillain fights are quite possibly the least interesting part. I was sitting through the climax thinking, oh god, really? Do we really have to sit through this? Because the climax literally goes from the Electro fight straight into the Goblin fight. Like, the instant he's taken down, the Goblin flies down and goes, hello, I'm your new villain.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's a problem I notice with a lot of these superhero reboots, starting with the Chris Nolan films. They try to be deep and emotional, and they try to really intricately develop their characters, but then they run into the problem that these villains were built as cartoons in the first place, and they're gonna have to deal with that at some point. In this case is one instance in which I cannot make fun of Chris Nolan, because, say with the Joker, Chris Nolan probably looked at the Joker and said, okay, this man is a maniac. There is no making him sympathetic in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, frankly, like I said, the super villain battles are the least entertaining part of the film. That's why I'm not overly excited about rushing straight into a new movie that focuses purely on the super villain battles. But that's not to say the climax is entirely without merits, because the one thing that happens, and I'm going to say here,
Massive spoilers.
yeah, they decided in this movie to do the death of Gwen Stacy.
So I heard.
Yeah, that's purely the reason why the Green Goblin's here. It's because for some reason we have to have the Goblin for the death of Gwen Stacy. It couldn't have been anyone else, even though it would have made just as much sense. I mean, we've already established that Electro has a grudge against Spider-Man if he ever figured out who he was. Oh man, but anyway.
Yeah. Man, going back to self-serving traditionalism, I guess apparently, for the sake of tradition, we can't have anyone else do it.
Yeah, so we get the death of Gwen and Stacy, and whilst there is one moment of overdone symbolism where Spider-Man shoots out a web and then you zoom in on the end of the web and it looks like a hand reaching out, the death was done really, really well. And because, like I said, I really like the character, she was amazingly well done. It goes enough time to show Peter go through the grief, and the actual moment of death, like I said, the fact that the two actors are an item in real life really helps with that. It's really hard to describe, again, because it mostly comes down to performance and the visual cues, but the way they show Peter dealing with that grief is done really well. And there have been some people saying that this should have happened earlier in the movie and then have the rest of it be Peter's recovery. I actually kind of like the way it ends, with Peter listening to Gwen's valedictorian speech again and being able to slowly transition away from that, and then ending on him coming back as Spider-Man and defending a kid from the Rhino and just cutting away before the big battle comes in. That, I think, was a good ending for the film. At least I would say that if we then didn't bring out the stupid Man in Shadows plot again. Because he then starts talking to Harry and goes, oh, we should set up a small team, should we not? It's like what would happen if you try to do the Marvel continuity and do it wrong. No one in their right mind gives a crap. Nothing about this is significant. Like, okay, the reason why the Marvel continuity thing worked so well is because it was hyping up stuff that people actually cared about. When Nick Fury showed up and said, I want to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative, that was something that actually got people excited. With this, it's just a man in a hat going, oh, there's a great conspiracy. Really? Yes, and it may involve Doc Ock in the next film, possibly, depending on how people react to the trailers.
Of course.
And it really doesn't help that they've had so many terrible edits done to these films. Like, if you actually watch the trailers for this and Amazing, you'll notice that they'll say stuff like, "Do you think what happened to you was an accident, Peter? There is a lot going on you don't know about. We can change the world." And there's even a scene in the first one where it's implied Dr. Connors had something to do with the disappearance of Peter Parker's parents. That never comes up. Ever. In the actual movies. Even the filmmakers didn't have faith in their conspiracy plot that they cut it out of the film.
Oh my god. And furthermore, don't get me started on the "your whole life has gone according to plan" shit, because Eisen.
Yeah, so, to sum up, I don't think the movie is as bad as everyone says. It's entertaining, and there are some really good points I still like, so for those points alone, I'm happy that these movies exist. But there are so many problems with this movie, I will not deny that. So I think now is probably the best point to end the Amazing series. I mean, I will be sad to see Andrew Garfield go. As far as I'm concerned, he's the Matt Smith of Spider-Man, if that makes any sense as an analogy.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
He was a great actor, and I'll be sad to see him go, but yeah, I think it's probably best we end this series here.
Before it gets the opportunity to get any cheesier. Whenever you're setting up a conspiracy with a main villain whose name is literally Gustav Fear, there is nothing good on the horizon.
Yeah, literally, I think the only thing that could save Amazing Spider-Man 3 is if it starts off with a Man of Shadows, who's then arrested by the police and then shut away, so that we can get back with with a completely new plot and just dump the conspiracy crap.
Please let that happen.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, that's my main review for this week. Sven, what's your summary?
Well, speaking of series that have been known for their crappy villains, the Legend of Korra finale. Now, I'm going to lead into this by saying that I have a turbulent history with the Legend of Korra. After absolutely loving the first series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Season 1 was a disappointment, to say the least. Season 1 was crap, and Amon was a god-awful villain. In my opinion, please don't kill me, I've already pissed off the Dragon Ball Z and Call of Duty fan bases.
Yeah, I agree with you that my only experience has been Book 1 and the first 4 episodes of Season 2, and yeah, I gotta agree, Book 1 just felt a bit rusted. Amon, he had potential, but then they just wrapped it up and said, "Oh, don't worry, he's a bloodbender, so he's evil. Ignore everything we brought up."
Yeah, even though this entire series, aside from that, desperately tries to steer clear of the first season's trope of all firebenders being assholes. Despite that, we just automatically have to believe that Amon is evil by virtue of being a bloodbender. And furthermore, that bloodbending plot made no sense. Just make him an energy bender and be done with it. The explanation would have made more sense. But anyway, the first season was crap. The second season was hit and miss. Because
I'm gonna say, I've only seen the first 3 episodes, but it's been only misses so far. I mean, I was gonna say, please may it get better than this, because literally, the first series, it's basically been one guy going, "Korra, you must unlock your full spirit potential, I'm a villain. You must step away from your father, who is misguided, I'm the villain. And then you need to unlock the spirit's powers in order to merge the spirit realm with the real world. By the way, I'm a villain."
Yeah, I was gonna get to that, because as bad as Amon was, then there's Udalok. Who I swear, Brian Konietzko and Mike DiMartino looked at Scar from The Lion King and said, "Thumbs up, perfect villain."
Oh, God.
But luckily you're kind of in luck, because the series does improve. The second season does improve around halfway, whenever it takes a complete shift in tone, which probably tells you something.
Wow.
But Yeah, it does improve halfway on, even though Unalaq still remains a cartoon on the level of Raul Julia's Bison. I'm not gonna spoil too much, but the series gets magnitudes better in Season 3, with, I would argue, perhaps the best villain in the entire Avatar franchise.
Wow.
Yeah, I really, really, really liked Season 3, so you have that to look forward to.
Wait, was that the one that ended up on Nickelodeon's website, or was that Series 4?
That was Series 3, and you'll see why it ended up solely on the website. This villain does something I didn't think you could get away with on Nickelodeon.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that's making me more curious, not gonna lie.
Season 3 was awesome. It was emotional, it had the best villain in the series in my opinion, and all around, I have no complaints. And Season 4, thankfully enough, continued that.
Well, hey.
Series 4 continues Series 3's trend of being really, really good and really, really emotionally investing, because, okay, there's no way to talk about this season without dipping into spoilers, so I'm gonna dip into spoilers.
Okay.
I hope you don't mind.
No, it's fair enough. I had the whole of Book 1 spoiled for me, and on Twitter already people have been talking about the end of Korra, so I already know about Asami, just to say.
Yeah, so you know where this review is probably going to end up, because that ending is kind of worth talking about. Book 4 starts off as the recovery point from Book 3, because the ending of Book 3 was traumatizing. Basically, a world leader ends up dead, and Korra ends up being cripplingly poisoned. And Book 4 begins as the recovery period from that, going through Korra's journey of rediscovery after having her ass completely handed to her.
Ouch.
Which, to be honest, is a welcome change, because up until this point, Korra as a protagonist has ranged from very endearing to very insufferable.
Oh god, yeah. That's one of my main problems with the first 4 episodes I've watched of Book 2. God, that girl's an idiot.
Yeah, thankfully, that gets better in Season 3 and continues getting better in Season 4, otherwise I would not be giving this series a favorable review. Series 4 deals with Korra disappearing because she is no longer the Avatar she used to be and now has to relearn basically everything, including certain aspects of actually how to physically function. In the meantime, because of said death of a major world leader, the Earth Kingdom is subjected to another one of the dictators the Avatar series is so famously known for, Kuvira. But while Ozai from Avatar The Last Airbender was basically just a one-note sociopath cartoon, Kuvira is basically what Ozai would have been if he actually had human qualities.
Wow.
Because basically, she steps up and takes power and is beloved by her people because, yeah, she stepped in during the middle of crushing anarchy. And slowly slips into tyranny from there, as so many well-intentioned world leaders are wont to do. Huh. So, that's the setup of the series. Korra is slowly, desperately trying to recover so she can help the world, and in the meantime, the Earth Kingdom's interim president is becoming more and more of a tyrant.
That already sounds a lot more intriguing than what I've seen so far, I'm not gonna lie.
Well, that's not saying much, but it is actually very intriguing. Eventually, of course, the issues are worked out, and the series rounds off in true Avatar fashion, with, what else, the main character taking down the main antagonist. In this case, it involves a fight with a gigantic mecha instead of a one-on-one duel, but that's beside the point.
Oh yes, I've forgotten the mechas were in this series.
Yeah, in this case, a colossal mecha, which, admittedly, I would really like to see go against the Colossal Titan from Attack on Titan, but that's beside the point. And, yeah, the series runs off with that. The mecha is taken down, Korra actually develops as an avatar and talks the main antagonist out of a very, very bloody final battle, and the series ends off well. By well, I mean... Okay, let me first explain to you one of my biggest gripes with the first 2 seasons. The love triangle. That thing that I hate in all of its forms no matter what series it's in. It was stupid whenever it happened in Final Fantasy VII, and it's been stupid ever since. Which makes the ending of Legend of Korra even more hilarious to me, because the quite frank jackass who both Korra and her friend Asami were pining after for so much of the series ends up in a pretty embarrassing situation as both of his girlfriends end up in a relationship with each other.
Yeah, that... The first I heard about this, someone was tweeting their reactions to the final episode. Someone who hasn't liked Korra at all, I should probably mention. And they were probably saying, oh, would you look at this? Korra and Asami were made for each other. And I hadn't seen season 1 for a while. I was thinking, oh, who's Asami? Is that a new character that's introduced? Why does the name sound so... Wait, that Asami? Really? They went there? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Not only did they bone over the main male romantic lead, they got away with a same-gender couple.
Yeah, I was going to ask your feelings on that because I have seen this being the subject of debate, not as you might think whether or not there should be a gay couple. Most parts of the internet will accept it of that. It's more whether or not this was a triumph since we have a same-gender couple or a misstep because there are some people who dislike the fact that it seemed to come out of nowhere.
Well, I can kind of see that, but I would ask these people to go back and watch Season 3. Because Season 3, aside from really developing Korra, also develops Korra's relationship with Asami, who goes from being a romantic rival to basically being Korra's best friend. And yeah, honestly, if you can see that sort of development, maybe you need to go back and rewatch the series. But I do see where they're coming from. I wish this had gotten more development, but there was enough development to make the excuse that they could become a couple. Easily. I mean, they were already best friends. It wasn't a big step.
Yeah, that makes sense. I suppose as well, this kind of thing's normally hard to get away with, but since it's the last episode, they probably thought, what the hell, let's make it official, and then ran with it.
Yeah, and surprisingly enough, Nickelodeon actually agreed with it, which surprised the hell out of me. And I'm glad they did, because after a series finale that was otherwise fantastic anyway, seeing that, my jaw basically went through my keyboard, so...
Yeah, I definitely do think it's a good progressive step if they were okay with it. I also find it hilarious because, again, part of the whole big thing of Season 1 was that Asami and Korra were part of a big love triangle with Mako, who... He's not unlikable, he's just dull. Like, really, really dull.
Yeah, for me, it became really difficult to like him after Season 2. You're gonna get to this, but basically he screws both Korra and Asami over big time. Which basically made him transform from a boring character to me to a jackass up until this season. Thankfully he developed too, but I still would not have shipped him with either Korra or Asami if they were the last people on Earth.
You know, part of me is trying to decide whether or not I should stick with Season 2 and just go on to Season 3 at this point.
What I would recommend doing is this. Watch the second half of Season 2. From the flashback episode, the title of which I cannot remember, up until the end. Because that sets up for Season 3. That is the only part of Season 2 that sets up for Season 3.
Okay, yeah, I might be tempted to do that because, like I said, and I don't want to sound like the grumpy guy, but those few episodes, they were really tough to sit through, I'm not gonna lie.
They were. The first half of Season 2 was horrible.
Yeah, and actually, that led me to one other question I was going to ask. I know comedy has been a big part of the last Airbender series, so it's not going to go away. But does it at least improve? Because a lot of the comedy from Bolin and that bloody Airbender kid who farts all the time, I'm really not enjoying that. I'm usually fast-forwarding their scenes every time they pop up, frankly.
Well, that's a hard thing to define, because Bolin basically stops being comedy relief in Season 4.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, and as for Milo, well... God, that's hard to define, because Milo's humor basically just kind of stays the same, if not with the exact same jokes. So, you'll see if that style of humor works in Season 4, I guess.
Okay. Well, if Bullet In at least grows up and stops being the go-to comic relief guy, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, and I mean, he basically completely stops being the comic relief, almost. There's still a side of him in Season 4 that's a lot like Sokka, just reacting to the abject ridiculousness of some things. But that's the good kind of comedy. Sokka was worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I can handle with stuff like that. It's more in Season 2 and in some cases of Season 1, he existed purely to basically destroy any tension of that scene with a stupid comment or a slapstick joke, which I just couldn't stand.
Yeah, speaking of Lion King parallels, he was basically Pumbaa.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for giving me light at the end of the tunnel, and that's...
Yeah, I would especially say look forward to Season 3, because for one, Korra actually becomes a sympathetic protagonist, and for two, the plot is really, really, really good.
Awesome. I'll definitely look forward to checking it out.
And I will state this again, where have these villains been this entire series? If there is one thing I would criticize the entire Avatar franchise for, it is the ridiculous one-note villain. I mean, okay, Ozai was a terrifying presence, but he was a one-note cartoon. Same with Azula. Amon sucked. Unalaq is just friggin' hilarious. But, honestly, in Seasons 3 and 4 of Korra, I'm just like, where have you been this entire time? Because Zahir and Kuvira are leagues ahead of the rest of the villains. Even though, of course, I don't condone any of their actions. They're kind of terrible people. They are awesome characters.
Yeah, that goes without saying, but still, if you can actually get a good villain who's a well-developed character and interesting to watch, then yeah.
Yeah, speaking of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, there's your contrast to Harry. All in all, social progress and all, I wholeheartedly recommend the final 2.5 seasons of Legend of Korra, finale and all.
Awesome.
Look forward to that, my friend.
Thank you, I will. And with that awesome recommendation, we can now move on to the final section, which is...
Quickfire Reviews!
This is the section where we reviewed everything else we've read, watched or played, but within the maximum time limit of 60 seconds. Sven, anything you want to throw into this, or...?
Well, just briefly, I'll revisit an old review of mine, and really quickly review...
Open XCOM. Basically a mod of the original XCOM UFO Defense. I can only sum up Open XCOM with one phrase that I stated earlier, but now receives special emphasis. Tortured screaming in the distance.
Somehow, through modding, XCOM UFO Defense finds a way to get harder.
Yeah, mods have a habit of doing that. Do you not remember Kaizo World?
Oh god, that's true. Yeah, apparently you do not know the meaning of pain in XCOM until you're beset upon by gazers. Which, for the record, are basically giant cyclopean crabs with the defense of an M1 Abrams tank.
Wow.
And might I add, the accuracy of a war movie sharpshooter.
Oh god. Wow, that is...
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Ernie, I have shot all of your friends and your family 15 miles away.
Yeah, to revisit the old Yahtzee quoting that I used to do, the gazers, even though they are probably made of titanium laminated with Kevlar, they prefer to take out their enemies in the old-fashioned honorable way from the next town over.
Yeah. They think I'll stay clear of that one, thank you.
I recommend it! I only play it because I'm a masochist.
Fair enough. I have just the one review this week, so I'll just quickly get into it.
Smash Bros. For the Wii U. Absolutely love it. Gameplay is a lot more balanced this time. There's less of the tripping, although the character's speeds are really good. It's generally an awesome game and I'd recommend you buy it, but I do have a few nitpicks. Number 1. If I change the button layout for whatever reason, I would like that button layout to stay consistent throughout the entire game, not asking me to reset the button layout every time I go into a different mode. Number 2. Custom characters is a cool feature that could have separated the game from the rest, but the fact that you've made them random collectibles that are hard to find just makes the whole system completely worthless. And thirdly, I know that you get a lot of demand for characters, but can you just decide what makes a character, because when half of the characters are costume movesets and the other ones are recolors that somehow felt the need to be promoted to a clone character, it's really confusing.
Oh god, that just sounds bad.
Well, Lucina's a separate character, which I would have found awesome, except she plays exactly like Marth, with the exception that, all of her blade does maximum damage, not just the tip. Okay, great, that makes it absolutely worthless. And then you've got Dark Pit, who is, even in the story of Kid Icarus Uprising, was a clone of Pit. And yet, he's not a costume, he's a fully fledged character. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's just stupid.
Yeah, and by contrast, you've got the Koopalings, our longtime Mario enemies, who are all costumes for one character, and then you've got Alf, the Player 2 character Pikmin, who is also a costume. I don't get it. What is the distinction of a character anymore?
Wow, I don't even know. Maybe the series will be better whenever it switches hands from Sakurai.
Yeah, and oh god, Dr. Mario. I forgot to mention Dr. Mario is a full-fledged character again. How?
Still?
Yeah.
Why?
I know, he was cut from Melee and then he's brought back in as a French character. Like, he could just be a costume at this point. I don't get it.
Yeah, but why? They could have done so much more interesting things.
I know. But like I said,
Wow.
it's still...
So much more interesting things. That was fantastic grammar there, Mr. Writer.
Dear. But yeah, it's still an incredibly fun game overall. It's just there are some slight kinks, but one other positive I will throw in there is that I do freaking love the Mii fighter creation systems.
Yeah, and honestly, I just approve of Smash Bros. Wii U because it has Lucina. Lucina has so far been one of the only lords I have completely and unironically liked, because most of the time the lords in Fire Emblem are the most boring characters there.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, she is definitely fun to play as, it's just that there's very little to actually separate her from Marth. That's my only complaint.
Even though, in Fire Emblem, their fighting styles are nothing alike.
Yeah, but problems aside, it is still a fun game overall, and I'll recommend it. And nothing else springs to my head. Oh, actually, one thing I can do right now.
Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, a remake of Pokemon Sapphire, and I'm gonna say a really, really good one. All of the features I liked in X and Y, such as the Experience Share, Super Trainer, and the Pokemon Amiibo have all been brought back in, and the game is filled with little touches to improve the first one. It's really minor things, but stuff like stars being reflected in the water, having unique features to make it stand out, plus the way they've characterized Team Aqua, all adds up to an experience that I would say is definitely better than the original. If you're a fan of Pokemon, I'd recommend picking this up.
And I'll take that as a wholehearted recommendation because, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald were my favorite games in the series.
Yeah, in that case, I can definitely recommend it, especially since the villains actually have characterization this time.
Thank God! I distinctly recall in one Pokemon discussion just calling Teams Magma and Aqua a bunch of losers.
Indeed. In fact, actually, I will also mention that now that the admins have characterization as well.
Oh, thank God, they're not just slightly palette-swapped mooks.
Yeah. With all of those, that's the end of this month's Monkey broadcast. Once again, send the questions to the usual places, and hopefully this will lead into another good year for the show. But for now, I've been the Jonin Monkey.
And I've been Sven the Crusader. The snark this city deserves.
That was Monkey Broadcast, a monthly review and discussion show hosted by the Jonin Monkey and Sven the Crusader. If you feel that you've been the subject of slander or that your copyright has been misused, please PM me and I'll try and get round to fixing it as soon as possible. We also welcome any comments, be it feedback or your own viewpoints on any of the things we've discussed. Until next month, have fun kids!